Salam əziz müəllimlər, hər vaxtınız xeyirli olsun. Bu videoda sizlərə lesson plan 2-ni təqdim edəcəm. Birinciyə baxmayanlar mütləq baxsın ki, artıq ikincidə onlara rahat gəlsin. Deməli, ikinci mövzumuz bizim 7-ci və 8-ci sinif dərsliklərimizi əhatə edir. Free time activities, developing students' listening skills and encouraging students to share how they spend their leisure time and explore new hobbies. I choose two substandards and they are 1.1.2 and 2.1.2 and divide the content of the text he or she listens to into parts, state his or her attitude about the topic during discussions, and learning outcomes. Our learning outcomes are develop their speaking skills for guests and specific information by listening to the talk about the free time activities and get the meaning of the words, phrases from the context and express their opinions on various places and discuss and justify their preferences. And my objectives are by the end of the lesson, students will be better able to develop their listening skills and state his or her attitude about the topic during discussions. And my integration is interdisciplinary integration. Resources, my resources, I use these resources, audio clips or videos of free time activities, image of free time activities, worksheet with guided listening activities, workbank with key vocabulary, and it's important to mention that student book. Okay, so strategies are brainstorming. I use this brainstorming in motivation stage, question answer, and 3-to-1 method, think, pair, share, and my working form is pair work, group work, and I use self-assessment and criteria assessment rubric. And my self-assessment, I can mention that I can respond to the question during discussions, I can express my opinions in discussions, I can explore new hobbies, I can identify the main idea in the listening passage, and I can understand the listening passage, I can collaborate with my classmates, I can share how I spend my leisure time. Okay, so you can change this self-assessment rubric and you can mention in your lesson plan. Okay, so then I use the assessment rubric, and my criteria is listening, speaking, and teamwork, and I assess my students for level. And listening criteria, one level having difficulty with dividing the content of the text he or she listens to into parts, and second, partially divide the content of the text he or she listens to into parts, and third level, sufficiently divide the content of the text he or she listens to into parts, and fourth level, freely divide the content of the text he or she listens to into parts. And my criteria speaking, and I evaluate my students for the first level having difficulty state his or her attitude about the topic during discussions, and the second, partially state his or her attitude about the topic during discussions, and the third level sufficiently state his or her attitude about the topic during discussions, and the first level freely state his or her attitude about the topic during discussions. And okay, so the last criteria, my last criteria, teamwork, and the first level during group work and discussions, he or she has difficulty with cooperating with his or her classmates, and the second level during group work and discussions, he or she partially cooperate with his or classmates, and the third level during group work and discussions, he or she sufficiently cooperate with his or her classmates. And finally, the first level during group work and discussions, he or she freely cooperate with his or her classmates. And then motivation, and I use discussion and brainstorming method. And I begin with a quick discussions about leisure time. I ask students to share how they spend their leisure time and hobbies. And brainstorming, I ask students to name some free time activity they know, and I write their answers on the board. And okay, so I show a slide, a few slides about free time activities to students, and even though I show a few slides about free time activities to the students, okay. And I use pair work. The students work in pairs and discuss the questions. While they are discussing the questions, I monitor and help them if necessary. But the discussion time is over and signal to students that it's time to conclude their conversations and return to the whole class setting. I nominate random students to share their ideas or opinions with their whole class. For example, the research questions are you afraid of roller coaster rides, or do you find them fun? Do adults love roller coaster rides? Why or why not? And the students begin to discuss these questions and try to share their ideas. Okay, so my next task, I tell students that they are going to listen a talk. As they listen, they should answer the question. Before you play the recording, I get them to read the question and options. After they have completed the task, have them compare their answers in pairs, then discuss the answer, and they begin to discuss the answer as a class. Okay, so my next task is I tell students that they are going to listen to the same talk again and complete the sentences. And before you play the recording, have them read and the sentences. I may decide to play the recording once or twice, depending on your students' needs. Okay, I sometimes decide to play the recording 3 times. Okay, so after they have completed the task, have them compare their answers in pairs, and they try to discuss the answers as a class. Okay, so this individual work, I get students to work individually, read the audio script on page 142, and guess the meaning of the words or phrases. When they are done, they discuss the answers as a class. My next task is I have students work in small groups and compare and contrast their places. I encourage them to speak about each place, and they agree on the best place to visit as a class. Okay, so before they start doing this task, I remind them to use functional language of agreeing or disagreeing. I may also want to pre-teach them some useful language which they will need when they compare and contrast the places. Okay, so while students are doing the task, and I monitor and take notes of both good language and inaccuracies for later feedback, and I try to give my students a constructive feedback. And reflection, the final stage. And I use 3-2-1 method to measure how students are achieving learning outcomes. And the students note 3 things they learned, 2 things they were interested in, and 1 question they faces for challenging. And that's how I evaluate students' knowledge and skills. In addition to this method, this question and answer method can also be used to measure the extent to which the witnesses understand the lesson, our lesson. And finally, homework. I give students prepare in poster about the leisure time activities. And that's all.